These are the things we wish we knew before we moved to Portugal. Hey folks, it's CJ, aka the Cash Flow Soldier, aka Courtesy Dad. Welcome to our channel, and for you who are new to the channel, a little bit about ourselves. Me and my wife are both retired government employees, and when it was time to retire, we decided to uproot our family, sell it all, and move to beautiful Portugal. And yes, it's beautiful. With that being said, there are a couple of things that we wish we would have known before we took the leap. And here are a couple of things. For one, we wish we would have known how bad landlords are here in Portugal. When we first moved to Portugal, we decided to rent a 3-bedroom apartment off of the beach in the town of Parede. Now, for the most part, we had a good time living there. The weather was beautiful. We had access to restaurants. The people were really nice. The people are beautiful here in Portugal, so you're not going to have an issue there. But when it comes to managing their properties on their own, Portugal residents are horrible. Now, what I mean is when we moved into our apartment, us being landlords and real estate managers, we knew that you need a checklist or a discrepancy list for moving into your apartment. And this wasn't provided by our landlord. So we took it upon ourselves to make our own move-in discrepancy list. And we just provided this discrepancy list to the landlord prior to moving in or shortly after. And for the 1 year that we lived there, the landlord did absolutely zero, even after acknowledging the discrepancies and saying they were going to fix it. So before you decide to rent a place in Portugal, you might want to consider using a property manager or a bigger company like Keller Williams or Remax. All of the properties you're going to be finding or looking for are probably going to be on the website Ideal List. And I'll leave that link down in the comments so you can find an apartment there. Next on our list is transportation. So living in the city is pretty easy because you have transportation all around. You have buses, you have trains, you have the Ubers, and the Ubers are really cheap here. But with public transportation comes public transportation issues. Now, sometimes, or a lot of the times, you're going to get a jacked up schedule, meaning the buses are going to be pretty late, the trains might be late, and it might be kind of difficult getting an Uber in certain parts of Lisbon, especially in Almada. But if you have your own vehicle and you guys are traveling and getting around like that, then good on you, because that'll probably be your best bet. If you do get your own vehicle, make sure you get the Via Verde, which is like an easy pass in the States, to avoid any excessive tolls or penalties driving through the toll booths or parking. We use the Via Verde app to park our vehicle in the major cities and going through tolls on the highway. It's pretty easy. It's deducted straight out of our account. Now, that brings us to what's next on our list, the banking system. Banks out here are atrocious. And I don't say that to be malicious. I say that because they are atrocious. They charge fees for stuff that shouldn't be charged. There's a monthly fee for certain banks, and the service that you receive is below subpar. Now, I say that because if you try to go into a bank during banking hours, you're going to usually get one teller, especially in the smaller towns, and you're going to get a line of people waiting to see that teller, even if you booked an appointment online. In our case, we usually book appointments online, and we still get late service in a line that we have to wait behind. Also, with the bank system comes, you can pay your bills here on inside the bank at the ATM. So usually there's only one ATM inside the bank or out in the neighborhood, and there's always a person on the ATM paying their bills. And this could take 10, 15, sometimes 30 minutes for this person to finish making their transactions. So be prepared for that. Next on our list is the schools. Schools here, public schools, we like. Private schools aren't worth it. So if you're considering putting your kids in a private school here in Portugal, you might want to consider public schools because you're not going to get much of a different education other than the language barrier. And if you move into another country, you kind of want to immerse your kids into the culture. So putting them in a public school will probably be your best bet. But since we have kids in both public and private school, we noticed that the private schools aren't much worth it. Other than speaking English, I wouldn't put my kids in a private school, personally. You don't need to worry about safety, and you kind of want your kids to learn Portuguese. So if you have younger kids, I would push them right into the public schools as soon as you get here. The only problem with public schools, which is also an issue with the private schools, is they don't have much for special needs kids. If you guys know us, we have one special needs kid who needs stuff like speech therapy, a little, but public schools don't really provide that, and private schools are limited on their resources. So before moving to Portugal, if you have a kid with special needs, you might want to do your research. It's going to be kind of tough. Next on our list is services. We have a few services. We have utilities for the home, we have cell phone, we have car repair service, and for the most part, we get stuff done, but it does not come without hiccups. For instance, we just currently switched our electricity from one company to another company. And when doing so, the company that we switched to did not provide us with the same coverage that the previous company had. Although there's nothing but a switch you have to turn on to switch companies in the computer. There's nothing physical you have to do. So once we switched utility companies, electric wise, to save a couple of dollars, we kept losing power, which is common in Portugal because they say that the power shuts off when you use too much power. Now, we never had that issue in the States, but here in Portugal is a huge issue, and they call it power consumption, excessive power consumption. I don't know what they call it, but that your power will shut down and will do it very often if you don't have the right amount of power issued to you. Now, in Portugal, not like the States, homes are a lot smaller, but that's a quality of life issue you might have to deal with. So these are things you need to consider before moving to Portugal. Your house might be a little smaller in order to reserve energy. And next on our list is the dog poop. Now, for us, we brought a pet here with us to Portugal when we moved here. That's Rambo, if you guys don't know who that is. And we have a yard, so for the most part, Rambo does his business in the yard. But when we do walk Rambo, we know to pick up the mess that he makes because it's common courtesy. But apparently, that is not the thing here in Portugal. We see people walking their dogs off the leash all the time, and the dogs make a mess. But does it get cleaned up? Cleaned up? No. There's poop everywhere in Portugal on the sidewalks. It's like it's part of the culture. It seems like people are doing it just, if it's a fad or something, like, how baggy jeans were in the 90s. It's like, hey, I got to bring my dog outside and leave a mess on the curb. That's the thing. And that's what it seems like. For the most part, we do not like it. And we warn everyone that's walking down here when they come to look down and make sure you're not stepping in poop or walk in the middle of the street like I do. I walk in the street all the time. People are looking at me like I'm crazy, but it's to avoid your dog's mess. So you need to consider that before coming to Portugal. And last but not least on our list, if you aren't here to actually retire in Portugal, if you are planning to work here in Portugal, you need to think again. There are almost no jobs you would want to consider here in Portugal unless you want to be a bagger at the supermarket or you want to work somewhere like Mio or Vodafone. Other than that, you almost have to have a virtual job or be working for a company coming out of the United States. We thought about starting up all kind of things here, and it is so difficult to get over the bureaucracy here in Portugal that you wouldn't believe it. You would think some place like this would want to capitalize on every possibility, but this country is decades behind when it comes to capitalism. It's like no one wants to make money here in Portugal. It's like if you say the word money, it's like, what do you mean? I don't want to make money. I just want to live off the government, or I don't want to make money. I like the way I live. But if you're a money maker and you're all about, getting out there and doing things, you might want to reconsider coming to Portugal because this is not the place for you. Well, folks, that's all we have for today. So if you are considering moving to Portugal and you want a little bit more information, maybe me or Coach Nella could give you a hand. So just leave a message down in the comments and we'll get back to you eventually, Portuguese style, and let you know what we think about the situation. So for now, thank you everyone. Cash Flow Soldier, Courtesy Dad out.